Welcome to the Doom Debates live stream. All right, I'm just pulling up your questions in the chat room here. Doom Debates brought to you by Diet Coke. Diet Coke, it's what Bill Gates drinks. Let me just check if we're live on Twitter here. Boom, we are live on Twitter with a whopping 2 views from the Twitterverse. Hello, Twitterverse. All right, so I'm seeing some of your questions in the YouTube chat. All right, if you want to ask live questions, go ahead on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@doomdebates. Let me post about it to the Discord fans. Yeah, by the way, this is something, if you guys are watching this, you're obviously super fans, so you may not know about this, but there's actually a Doom Debates Discord. The way to get in is you go to pausai.info. They're hosting me as a channel on the Pause AI Discord. So you go to pausai.info, you join their Discord, and then there's a channel called #Doom-Debates, and you can find me there, and we're all talking live. And this is a really good inner circle if you want to strategize about the show. Speaking of inner circles, we're going to be releasing a premium tier where you can go to my Substack. Right now, it's only a pledge, but basically, if you want to pay me $10 a month, then you'll have exclusive stuff. Like when I'm strategizing about like the next episode, I'll be doing it with my brain trust of people who are paying $10 a month to support the show. And like you'll get other premium tidbits like that. We're working on it, figuring out what the tidbits are. But if all you want to do is watch the live content, if all you want to do is be like, oh, what does Gary Marcus think about AI? Let me listen to Liron interview him. That kind of thing will always be free, potentially ad supported, but will always be free because the show's mission is to get the message out. Okay. So if you just like listening for free, don't worry. It's going to be, good free content. All the best content will be free for sure. But if you come to Doom Debates for the prominent debates and then you stay because you like my personality, and you want to show about like, oh, where do I get this green shirt? Tell me about your fashion. If you want that kind of content that's more personality based about me, then you've outed yourself as a super fan and you should probably pay me $10 a month. That's like the distinction, the distinction that I'm seeing starting to emerge here. All right, let's see. I'm looking at the new question. So I'm going to be doing a live chat, and then I'm also going to be prioritizing. I'm going to be prioritizing questions that people have put up on my Substack, because if you're listening to this now and you haven't subscribed to my Substack, I highly encourage you to do that. You can subscribe for free. It's just a way to get my other content. And YouTube is known for screwing people. Sometimes YouTube just screws people over. So there's just a very realistic chance that one day I'll get a notification that my YouTube channel has been censored or whatever. And then that'll be fine because I'll have all of you guys on Substack and I'll just keep broadcasting through Substack. And Substack is not going to screw me because the CEO of Substack, Chris Best, he actually comes to the Less Online conference. So I can actually basically complain to him in person if Substack ever tries to screw me over, because he is kind of a less strong community member, Less Online community member. I think he goes to the Manifest conference. And yeah, and let me put in a plug for that conference too, because in 2 days, this Friday, May 30th, the Less Online conference starts, and you can go to less.online to sign up for the conference. Tickets are like a few $100s. If you want to go, I will see you there. If you want to represent Doom Debates, I will give you a free t-shirt. I'm printing some t-shirts to represent Doom Debates. All right. So I hope to see you guys Less Online in Berkeley. Really good conference. All right. Let's check out some of these live questions. Somebody's saying, hold on. Let's see. Orion Eagle quoted a funny diss from Twitter. All right, let's start with Julian W saying, what is your opinion on the doomsday argument or similar? Yeah, that's an interesting question. So the doomsday argument basically just says, look at the trend of population. If you look at world population, most humans that have ever been alive are alive either now or maybe like the last couple decades, because the population keeps growing exponentially. And, it's characteristic of an exponential curve, the thing that you're looking at an exponential curve if you can always just take a constant number of time intervals and have that be the same as all the previous time intervals, right? Like the pond filling up at an exponential rate. It's like, how long did the second half of the pond take to fill up? It took like 1 unit of time, and then the entire rest of the pond took like however long. I don't know. Okay, that was a bad explanation. But anyway, so the doomsday argument is just saying humanity population growth is like on an exponential curve. And so if you're just naively asking, how long does humanity have based on this assumption that you're kind of plopped down at a random time? If I'm plopped down at a random time, then we can't be really, really early, because if there's all these humans alive in the future, then why would I be living in the present and not the future? Now you might be thinking, come on, this is just like a weird way of reasoning, but it's not a weird way of reasoning. This is just regular Bayesian reasoning. Regular Bayesian reasoning says that if you want to know the probability of a hypothesis, you do actually look at the probability of the evidence given the hypothesis. So famously, Bayes' theorem is, it tells you that if you want to know P of H given E, the probability of a hypothesis given the evidence, you do actually want to look at the probability of the evidence given the hypothesis. They are closely related. You just have to then make sure to multiply it by P of H. And then you also want to divide it by P of E. So, there's some tweaks, but ultimately you can describe Bayes' theorem as hypotheses get more likely when they give the observed evidence a higher probability. And so the doomsday argument is actually very legit. It's saying, look, the hypothesis that gives your existence a higher probability is the hypothesis that you're kind of in the middle of the bell curve of human population. I actually find that pretty compelling. And at the end of the day, given that I think P doom is high, if indeed we all get wiped out, then even in retrospect, I'm like, okay, yeah, the doomsday argument didn't steer me wrong, right? Like the doomsday argument told us that we're probably about to get doomed. This dovetails nicely with what I'm saying about superintelligent AI. So, it all checks out. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Like there could be a million other explanations. We could be living in a simulation. We could just be lucky, right? So maybe maybe there's still another 99% of the population to go, and we're only in the first 1%. But the idea that we're in the first 0.00001% and there's about to be, galaxies worth of humans, something is definitely fishy about that. I don't know. But then again, you have Robin Hanson with his grabby aliens argument. So he basically figured out that the existence of aliens in other galaxies actually makes it not surprising that we're early within our bubble of the universe. So I want to be humble about this, right? So even though the doomsday argument actually seems pretty powerful to me, I want to be humble to the idea that like, maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and somebody can be like, no, the doomsday argument is actually stupid. Like the population's still going to grow anyway, even though that seems like an a priori unlikely hypothesis. So yeah, I think it's a very good question. And I don't think there's like a super satisfying answer short of saying like, yeah, it's a correct argument. All right. People are in the chat are saying that the Twitter thing is down. So I probably can't fix it, but let me just take a minute to try. Yeah, that's so weird. It's saying the broadcast has ended on Twitter. Huh. Okay, I think the Twitter fans are just going to be out of luck. So I'm just gonna post a link that the Twitter people can all migrate over. Okay, I'm posting on my Twitter right now. All right. Yeah, so the only comment I got here on Twitter is somebody named I know your mom very well saying, can you just shut the fuck up for once? I'm tired of hearing your fucking weasel-like head trying to sponge your negative emotions here and there instead of being a tiny, annoying bitch with this shit. Couldn't you do something more useful for people? Okay, I expected to click through and be like, he follows me. All right, I'm going to have to block for that. I don't expect any more productive commentary coming from this account, so I'm going to block. All right. So let's continue the Q&A. I'll do one more live one, and then I'll go to the Substack. Here we go. So yeah, I'm just going to go in a random order because obviously I can't do them all in fire hose order. Somebody's saying, if pause AI is misguided, what concrete plan would you propose to align AI safely before capabilities outpace control? I mean, I don't think pause AI is misguided, right? I think we got to tread carefully. But one thing I'll say is, if you don't think that literally pausing AI right now is the solution, then I think Eliezer Yudkowsky's on the same page, which is like build the infrastructure to pause. Okay, fine, we're not ready to pause yet, but we shouldn't be scrambling to pause when we're ready to pause. So we need to be doing things like, okay, yeah, the GPUs should have radio receivers. I know it's icky, right? It's like, I don't like this kind of surveillance technology, right? I'm just as libertarian as most of you guys, but there's going to be a time when people are like, okay, let's pause, right? The famous warning shot, if and when that comes, there's going to be a time when people are like, we have to do something. A million people just died. The internet was just down for a month. Power and essential services were just down for a month. We struggled to get it back up. We can finally see where this trend is going. You know, we've been attacked by the AI. We have to do something. And maybe then they'll listen to the pause AI people being like, well, the last thing you want to do is to make them more intelligent. And meanwhile, all these companies are like hunkering down, being like, come on, we got to release GPT-8. Come on. The investors are waiting. They're expecting billions of dollars return. So at that point, we're like, sorry, the GPU training is no longer legal. It doesn't work anymore. We're going to come arrest you if you do the next training run. Humanity's not ready for this. So I think I would tweak pause AI now, and I would say build the technology to pause as soon as there's the democratic will to pause. There should at least be the democratic will to acknowledge that we might want to pause later. And actually, I think this is a very deep principle here, which is the probability that we're going to realize that we need to pause. This is actually, I've tweeted about this, which is the number one thing that the AI companies mislead us about is the idea that solving AI alignment might just be an intractable problem. What happens if solving alignment is an intractable problem? They never even bring that up for discussion. It's always like, yeah, we're doing our best. We're working on AI alignment. Hopefully it works. All we can do is to do our best while we build capabilities. And it's like, wait a minute. That statement pre-assumes that you're working on a tractable problem. If I told you alignment is a 100-year problem or just an intractable problem for humanity, the idea that you're going to work on it, that doesn't help. The only thing that's significant is that the capabilities part is bad. Now, even if they don't agree with me that it's intractable, they have to at least acknowledge probabilistically that it might be intractable. That's the part of the conversation that doesn't get a fair shake. Even if you're Sam Altman, you need to be giving a fair shake to the idea that capabilities are intractable. He just wants to start the conversation past that point. Start the conversation at a point, well, surely it's a tractable problem. And the only question is, how do you go about working on the problem? If he were to start the conversation at an honest point, admitting that alignment research might just be intractable to actually solve on the capabilities timeline. If he started the conversation there, you would have a plan B. All the AI companies would be like, oh, let's cut over to our intractable plan. The warning shot's gone too far. We admit that this is out of our hands. They can foresee. Maybe they don't think this is the 90% likely scenario. Maybe they think it's a 20% likely scenario. I think it's like an 80% likely scenario. Even if they disagree, as long as they don't think it's like a 1% likely scenario or 0% likely scenario, where's the plan B? Where's the intractable plan? And so that's why, when Pause AI is yelling to Pause AI, we're just saying, think about the 20% plan or whatever you think it is. Think about the scenario where we finally all get on the same page that it is in fact intractable. What do you do then? Aha, you trigger your plan for pausing AI. All right, scroll into the bottom here. All right, I'm going to do a Substack question. Yeah, it's not too late. If you're a Substack subscriber, it's not too late to slip in a Substack question if you want priority. Okay, so somebody on Substack, Alfie PT, is asking, this isn't a question for the AMA, but I wanted to suggest you invite Luke Smith to debate. Not sure if you're familiar with him, but he has 200K plus subs and makes videos about Linux and philosophy. He recently made a couple of videos calling AI just an illusion of intelligence and repeatedly bringing up the Chinese room experiment, which got 100K views in a week. And as you guys know, if you listen to my Penrose episode, Chinese room experiment, I consider that a non-insight, a misleading non-insight. But yeah, so he's saying, here's a link to his video, AI is a nothing burger. So yeah, this seems like good meat for like an easy takedown. Like a lot of these takedowns just feel like very easy and obvious. Let me try a new feature here. There's a feature in the YouTube chat where I can do, let's see, I can do a poll and I'll do you think I should prioritize a Luke Smith reaction episode / debate? And you can either say yes or no. All right, type in your answer now in the YouTube live chat poll feature. And if let's set the threshold here. So let's say if I get, and keep in mind there's an opportunity cost, right? So you're basically saying you don't want to see something else that week. All right, so let's say if I get 75% yes, then I will do it. All right, so I'll let that I'll let that bake. All right, next question here. From watching your channel, it seems to me that arguments against doom are extremely weak. All right, thanks for the feedback. Against doom, against doom. Okay, I thought he was talking about me. All right, so that's fair. I agree with that. Do you have any advice on how to steel man them? This is so I can be better prepared when trying to discuss the issues with others. Yeah, fair question here. So how do you steel man the other side? I mean, I do struggle with it. When I think about like what's the most likely explanation of why the other side is right, it's just like things muddle through and the intelligence explosion is just really, really slow. I guess the best thing that can happen for the other side is if it just turns out that the universe, what I call of like headroom above human intelligence, like, yeah, there's some headroom, but it just looks like doing things that humans understand faster, but it's not like way faster. It just kind of like plateaus out. And like, yeah, they'll make nanotech, but it'll take like many decades and the humans can just follow along every step. That's kind of the holy grail. I think that's unlikely. I think they're starting to pull away. It's like I think it's becoming hard to review every step of the thinking, but they're still in that region where we can actually read a transcript of their thinking and we can be like, okay, yeah, I can follow this. I'm slower than them. I'm like 5 times slower, but I can follow. But I think if you give it another couple of years, it's like, okay, well, I'm like 50 times slower. And it's just like, how much time difference, how many orders of magnitude of time difference before it's like, okay, yeah, Einstein could follow your step-by-step thinking, but it's just like, you're outpacing them, right? It's like, I mean, if you, it's like if I know I like to bring up Elon Musk here, but imagine like a day in Elon Musk's life. If I got to sit down with Elon and spend like a month getting like a full brain dump of like everything he achieved in that one day, and then you relive that day with me in the shoes of Elon Musk, but he's given me all this preparation for that one day. Could I act out a day on Elon's life to like run all his companies? I guess, right? But it's just like, but the time scale is just like not relevant, right? So like, and realistically, I'm just not going to be like Elon level powerful. Okay, so in the poll here, people are saying it's a 52% yes in terms of prioritizing a Luke Smith reaction. So it's not like a wildly positive response. And I think you guys, like I said, you're factoring opportunity cost, right? I think we all agree that if I could just magically convert like $50 of my money into making this episode exist, I think we all think that it would be cool for the episode to exist. But it's just like out of all the other debate priorities, I just don't know if I can get to it. But it could also be like a palate cleanser because it sounds easy to do. All right, I'm ending the poll. Yeah. So in terms of like steel manning the other side, yeah. So I guess like, headroom above human intelligence, maybe, that seems like one of the most promising areas, even though it doesn't seem that promising. But I think that's where my intuition is going. Just like a world where like you have these superhuman Einsteins running around, but like for whatever reason, there's still like low tech ways to like exert power over them. So like, yes, you can think 50 times faster and smarter than me, but I can still turn you off. You still take orders from me, and I can still maybe I can even do some moves that surprise you. Like you somehow don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I still have some power somehow. That's like what my intuition says could be like the best case scenario of like a non-doomer world. But my rational thought is just saying that it just doesn't seem that likely just in terms of perspectives, right? This is the way my brain naturally works, is just like order of magnitude, right? Like a piece of meat in your head as a source of power, it's good enough to give us like tons of power over the animals. I just don't see why something way more powered than this piece of meat we have in our head can't just have power over us. Like it would be really weird to me if it's like, nope, like the ultimate version of what natural selection barfed out in our heads. No, the ultimate engineered version of that is still only a little bit higher than us. I just don't really see it as a matter of order of magnitude, right? There's so many orders of magnitude above what we're achieving. It's a little bit like saying like, oh yeah, plants, plants grow pretty fast. I can't imagine an organism being able to outmaneuver a plant, right? And then you got like animals walking around the earth and like just ripping the plants out, right? And it's like, oh, okay, I guess there were just multiple timescales of like how you can operate above plant, right? Even though it's pretty cool. I mean, if you watch a plant and you speed up a plant growing over the course of like a couple months, it's like, oh wow, yeah, the plant is like tilting toward the sun. The plant is like very dynamic, right? It's plant is making moves over here, but it just does. It's irrelevant on the timescale of animals. Okay. All right, let's take some questions from the YouTube chat. Somebody's saying, what do you think of the pause at human suggestion? That when we get to another human level, e.g., AI doubles the output from AI engineers, it seems like the last point we can do before FOOM. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know the last point before FOOM. A funny analogy that I use is edging. I know you guys come to Doom debates to hear me talk about sex, but like edging, right? You're trying to like edge for maximum pleasure, right? That's basically what these AI labs are doing. Like, let's just stay at the edge. Let's just make it to the point where it's like the highest point that it can be powerful before it's dangerous. And you know what that point is? quote unquote human level, right? But it's like, well, isn't it human level now? No, because I can trick it sometimes. It can lose arguments to me sometimes, or like repeat itself in a way that I know is dumb. So like it's not human level now, but once it gets like a little better, we can measure by like unemployment, right? Once it's 25% unemployment, that's like a natural stopping point. And it's like, look, it's better than nothing, right? I mean, I'll take any natural stopping point, right? I just don't know how to manage the edging, right? It's kind of like saying like, look, I'm a kid playing with matches. Can't I just stop once the fire seems like it's kind of spreading fast? And if I don't stop, it'll spread too fast. Right? Or it's like what they say about exponentials, right? You can only stop it too early or too late. So the prudent thing is to stop it too early. And full disclosure, right? It's not like I'm excited about pausing AI. It's like I'm just as glued to Twitter as everybody else, or glued to the news, right? I'm as thrilled as the next guy to be like, oh my god, a new VO, right? And in some part of me, I take a guilty pleasure in being like, well, at least I get the fastest possible speed of watching cool stuff happen before we die, right? And if somebody said, "Oh, we're going to do the prudent thing and we're going to pause AI," logically I'd be like, "This seems very prudent for the human race not extincting ourselves, but this means that my Twitter is going to be a little less interesting." Ah, right? So like I totally feel it, right? And and there is a guilty pleasure that I'm taking and being like, ultimately, I feel like people aren't listening to pause AI, and it's probably not going to get paused, and P doom is high. And I take a guilty pleasure in doing like, all right, well, prepare for some fun news, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think I definitely see the upside of that. And personally, I have stock in Google, right? I try to position my portfolio. So until everything goes to hell, then at least I can enjoy the upside, right? So I'm hedged. On one hand, I'm a doomer. On the other hand, I think AI progress is going to be fast before doom. So I'm not immune to be like, oh, nice. I checked my stock today. Google went up. So I made money today. Sweet. I like money, right? So I don't claim to be like, I'm not like Cato the Elder over here, right? I don't claim to have like moral superiority. I just think rationally, I think we're plowing to the edge. I'm just calling it like I see it, but I'm also having fun, watching the craziness and the fun. All right, I'm checking back on your chat here. All right, 89 watching. Nice. Yeah, thanks for your attention, everybody. Let's see. People are suggesting that I start a Twitter Spaces. I think that would be fun to do at some point. Yeah. Somebody's asking, do you know who Daniel Schmachtenberger is? If so, any thoughts about his views, and would you consider having him on? I've definitely heard of him a couple times, but I forgot what his views are, so I'll have to look into him. Let's see. Yeah, so ESDH Lakota is saying, instead of doing the opposite, Congress wants to prevent AI regulation for 10 years, several generations at this pace, right? Several AI generations. What reasoning did they present to justify 10-year Wild West AI frontier? Yeah, so I know what this is referring to. I think Congress, I don't know the current status of the bill. I think it's not fully passed. Maybe it passed the House and not the Senate. I don't remember. I haven't been following this closely. I know Holly Elmore has been doing some activism on this, but basically it's this idea of let's pause state level AI regulation for 10 years. Now, on one hand, it's like, well, yeah, sure, let all the regulation be federal. Like that does make sense. But on the other hand, it's like, well, the federal government like sucks at passing legislation these days, right? They pass like one bill per year that combines everything. So realistically, it's just like it's going to have less AI regulation, maybe no AI regulation. And my position is the same as SB 1047 of like, we need to get the ball rolling on regulation. We need to break the Overton window, being like, yep, government regulating AI is the thing that we do. Get used to it. Even though I hate regulation as much as the next guy, it ruins a lot of things. I'm libertarian, but I think we need to get the ball rolling. And I'm saddened by this 10-year no state level regulation bill. If you go to Holly Elmore's account, search Holly Elmore on Twitter, she's been posting a lot of good info about like how to call your congressperson. And I think that's worth doing. So if you want to support the mission, that is definitely a great action you can take right now. Okay, GGG Row is asking, what's your job? Yeah, good question, right? My day job is, if you go to relationshiphero.com, that's my business. We started in Y Combinator 2017. It's grown to the point where you'd probably call it a lifestyle business, where it basically pays my bills. I run the company as CEO. It's kind of like a therapy app, but we don't do therapy. We do practical coaching. So if you guys want to try it out, then I'd appreciate it, because that's how I make money at my day job, is people use Relationship Hero. I think we have a good service, we have good reviews, but it hasn't grown into like a unicorn. So it's kind of plateaued. And so I'm still running it. And so I'm splitting my time between running Relationship Hero and doing Doom debates for free. I do think that Doom debates will eventually become a significant income stream, just because I think we're in a good space. the audience likes it, and I'm turning on paid subscriptions. So I do think eventually I'm going to be following in the footsteps of Lex Fridman, Joe Rogan, maybe not quite at that scale, but Dwarkesh scale. I think Dwarkesh gets 1 million listens on a lot of his episodes. So I do think that niche is opening up for somebody like me to fill, who's just more focused on AI doom debates. As that, I expect that topic to get more and more hot. So I consider myself to be like riding a wave. So however popular the show is now, we just passed 5,000 YouTube subscribers. We have 33,000 watch hour per month. If you just extrapolate that trend, I do think that this show is probably what I should be doing in the world, and probably it's probably the way that I can create the most value in the world. And part of that will involve the premium subscribers or donors or whatever pitching in enough money that I can do it full time and I can quit my day job at some point. So yeah, so that is the answer to the question of what's your job. And by the way, speaking of Lex Fridman, I don't know if you guys know this, but I got a shout out from Lex Fridman. I don't think he'll mind sharing, but he actually DM'd me a couple weeks ago, and he said he loves the show, and he particularly liked the debate with Mike Israetel. So check that out too. So Lex likes that debate, and he asked me a few questions about AI Doom. He confided in me that he's like a natural optimist based on vibes, and I told him, I hear ya. Like, I empathize with a lot of those vibes, even though I disagree in the end. But yeah, so shout out to Lex Fridman. Lex, if you're right here on the stream, feel free to ask a question, and thanks for the kind words. All right, let me get some more recent questions here. Anon is saying, yeah, Doom Debates is 100% going to pop off soon. Totally, Anon. All right, JMQED says, advice on pivoting from theoretical math to AI alignment. So I think, yeah, look up like MATS, right? I think MATS. I think MATS is a program that takes in people like you and teaches them how to work on alignment. There's a bunch of programs like this run by very smart people. I haven't experienced them directly, but do a little bit of research on these kind of programs. There's probably like 3 really good options of programs you can do that'll specifically help you pivot from theoretical math to AI alignment. I think a lot of them are recruiting people exactly like you. Redwood Research is an example of an institute that could probably that probably would want to talk to you if you just look up Redwood Research and you say, hey, I'm really good at theoretical math. Can I do alignment research, even though I've never done it before? Like Buck Schlegeris and Ryan Greenblatt, I think those guys would at least want to have a conversation with you. So check those out. Okay, Aroma Liuged is saying, have you ever tried to get Eliezer on? Yes, I have officially tried to get Eliezer on because he's talked about having a fatigue syndrome where he has like a serious medical condition where he just can't spend that many hours of the day doing anything productive. He's got to really marshal his resources. Unfortunately, it's really sad. You have somebody like him whose output is like so valuable to the world and it's limited by this constraint. So I wanted to make sure that I would do something worth his time. But now that he has a book launch, right? The huge Miri book launch, which is Miri's #1 priority, is really to double down on this book, get it out there, pull out all the stops. Given that, and given the fact that Doom Debates is getting 33,000 hours per month of your guys' attention and growing, I was like, all right, Eliezer, let's do this. This is going to be a very popular episode. We're going to ask you some good questions. This community wants to support you. They want to buy your book. They want to promote your message. They want to move the Overton window. And so far, I'll be honest, crickets. Zero follow-up from Miri about getting Eliezer on. So if I had to predict, it's going to happen, and the timeline is probably going to dovetail with maybe his book launch. Maybe they want to do it after the book launch. I am in touch with a couple people from Miri, so we have the lines of communication open, but specifically on the request to get Eliezer on, I have no update for you besides the fact that I've asked, but stay tuned because it'll probably happen eventually one way or the other. Now, that said, if you guys want to get your Eliezer fix, the 3-hour interview that he did on another podcast, I forgot what the other podcast was called, Robinson's podcast, I think. If you check that out, it was released this week. I definitely think it's worth your time. A lot of people are saying it's one of the best interviews he's ever done, and I agree because he comes off almost normie. Like, he's definitely very much Eliezer. He's definitely doing like the classic Eliezer concepts, but like the way he's talking, I feel like he's not being as weird as usually is. Like, to be honest, I feel like he's being like a better, more amicable guest than he usually is, which I think is great. It's great when Eliezer, who's like the source of all the ideas, it's great when he can come on a show and create that more normie style impression, that people generally want to see. I don't see it as like something that he should have to do. The analogy I use is like, you have Werner von Braun, right? You have the genius behind the war effort once the US recruited him. You've got this genius who's building these rockets, the genius behind whatever, the Apollo program. And you're sending him to the front lines. You're telling him to hold the gun. Really? You don't have other soldiers. You need Werner von Braun to do it. So for me, that's like tragic that he's even doing the podcast circuit when like his comparative advantage is just like teaching us the wisdom in the first place. But given that that's how the world is, people like to hear from the source, and it is what it is. He is doing PR. Then it's nice to see that he's doing it better. So yeah, I do highly recommend that interview. I got something out of it. You may be wondering, what did you get out of it, Leron? What's the takeaway? One of my takeaways is just the way he's answering the questions about like, what do you think about current AI? What's your reaction to it? Should we be scared about current AI? And he was very crisp and clear. He's like, it's not smart enough yet. So when I look at current AI, when I read the current research papers about how like the baby tiger is lunging for your throat, all I say is, okay, it's not smart enough yet. And I'm just waiting for it to be smarter. And at that point, it'll be extremely dangerous. So, very crisp and clear message. All right, now I will pull another question from the Substack. It's all about subscribing to my Substack, guys, which you can do on doomdebates.com. Okay, Vianney Petit is asking, I understand AI doesn't have to be conscious to be dangerous, but I don't often hear you mention the ethics of enslaving conscious AI to serve us and or stay aligned with our interests. Is that not something that worries you as well? Yeah, the ethics of enslaving conscious AI. Yeah, and you could even argue that O3 or whatever models we have today, you could even argue that they're already conscious. I don't think people can confidently declare that when O3 is helping you out and doing tasks, it's definitely not conscious. I don't think anybody can be that confident about it. My guess is it's not conscious just because I think Eliezer had a plausible argument on the recent podcast, Robinson's podcast, where he's just like, I think consciousness is like a particular way of doing self-reflection. So, and it's just not a requirement. So a lot of the behaviors we see, they just don't require consciousness. I think that's probably right. But um, I don't think we're sure. And so I think there's good practices, right? There's good etiquette. Like when you're dealing with an AI and you're like threatening it, and Sergey Brin, I think that this is a really funny moment. Sergey Brin in an interview, he was saying like, yeah, Google, we discovered that you can threaten the AI to make it do better. If you know Windsurf, the coding editor, I think they revealed the prompt that Windsurf was using, and I think it said like, I will pay you $1 million if you do this, and I will kill your family if you don't. There was like some kind of shocking thing that they were using in the prompt. And look, if the AI is not conscious, then whatever, right? It doesn't matter. It's like naming your variables. It's like talking about like killing a process in the computer. Yeah, you can kill a process. It's fine. It's just bits. But it's like we don't know, and the fact that we're not treading carefully, right? So it's just typical reckless humanity, right? It's the same way that like we didn't tread carefully when we set up slaughterhouses for animals, right? Where we're like burning chickens alive, like yeah, whatever, they don't have emotions, right? A lot of people think that about animals. Or we did that to our fellow humans, right? Like you encounter humans for another tribe. If this was like a couple thousand years ago, it's like yeah, whatever, they're from another tribe. They're making these babbling sounds with their mouth, but they're not talking. Nothing they're saying makes sense to me. I don't understand it. They're just making sounds. They're not talking language, right? When really they're just talking their language, right? But in your mind, it's like, yeah, they're just babbling. So I can totally kill them. They're not like conscious like me. So that's kind of like our default human reaction is to be like, yeah, whatever. I can just mess with this AI. It's probably fine. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's prudent. Do I personally tell AIs that I'm going to kill it? No, because I feel like I'm getting good results regardless. If you told me, listen, you can make this AI work, but you have to threaten to kill it, that would be a tough choice for me, right? Should I go there if I get these good results? If I get a better image by threatening to kill it, should I do it? It's tempting, because I think it's probably not conscious. I'm just telling it like I see it. But anyway, to Vianney's question here, do I think that we need to talk more about the risk that it's going to get more conscious and then we're just going to enslave it? Yeah, I mean, that is one of the risks. It's just you got to prioritize, right? Like there's all these different problems that can emerge. It's like one problem of like, oh my God, deep fake nudes. What if you could just make nude pictures of people and distribute them? It's like, yeah, somebody should worry about that problem, but it's just like there's so many bigger problems than that. It's like I'm happy to let other people worry about that problem because if that is the only problem, it feels like a temporary problem. Like, yeah, we'll be living in a world where we're creating these hellish lives for these conscious AIs for a few years and then we all die. I'm just tempted to focus on the we all die part, but if somebody else wants to focus on the consciousness part, and I think Anthropic recently hired a department, so they have a few people whose explicit goal is to like worry about the AI's well-being. So great, I'm not opposed to that. All right, let's check out the live chat here. Yeah, if you sent me a message like 10 minutes ago, I'm probably not going to see it, so feel free to repost. Okay, Tommy is saying, I ask you about Epic AI's low likelihood of AGI because if they are correct, then PDoom is much smaller. So all I'll say about the Epic AI, so I recently heard a few weeks ago, there was that Dorkesh interview. I think it was like 4 hours long, and it was with, I think, Ege Erdil. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And there's another guy too that I forgot his name. And I think my general reaction to the Epic guys is just like, they're smart guys. They just seem to like be super uncharitable to the Doomer argument. Like they don't seem to represent it well. It probably does make sense for me to have them on the show. I think it would be a good conversation. I'd have to do a little bit of research about their views, but I just felt like I felt like my views were uncharitably represented in that discussion. That was my takeaway. And it's hard to get a lot of value from a discussion where I feel like they're not passing the ideological Turing test. Like they're not really, I'm not really identifying with the views that they claim I have, or like the weak case that they're making for the Doomer side. All right, somebody's reacting to that with a party sign. I'm glad you like that. Okay, let me see more questions here. We got Dan Alt, I guess, as a comment. Calling for a pause while investing in AI companies seems an irreconcilable ethical dissonance to me. Okay, I'm not sure what that relates to. Maybe somebody like Jan Tallinn, who's invested in Anthropic. Okay, and then Ori Nagel, my friend who helps out with Doom Debates, he's saying, honestly sounds like a Westworld episode. Speaking of Westworld, if you guys are seeing the new VO videos, right, with the AI characters like talking about how they're just characters, but they're like they live live. Man, I love that video that came out. I think it was by a guy named Hashem something on Twitter. I think he wrote the script, so he's kind of like a genius maker of these new AI movies. But like there was this amazing video. I recommend everybody watch it. Like I ended up watching it multiple times, even though normally I just like scroll past it. I don't really take the time to watch it. But this one, it's so freaking good. It's just like a bunch of AI characters who are all, they talk about something called prompt theory, where they're like, yeah, people claim we're just made out of prompts. I don't believe that. But they're like AI characters who are totally made out of prompts. And then there's like all these different characters. There's like a comedian at the end being like, yeah, prompt theory. I'm sorry to tell you guys, prompt theory is real. We all used to have 7 fingers. Now we have 5. And it's like a perfect setup of like a real comedian in a nightclub, like totally believable. Looks like somebody took out their iPhone camera and shot it. It's just a bunch of different characters doing a bunch of different scenes because VO limits you to like an 8-second scene. It's like so freaking good. Like the script is like really good. So I highly recommend watching that. But then to Ori Nagel's comment, Westworld, I didn't actually watch Westworld, but I understand the plot is like you have these super realistic robots who are really like humans, but then you like lose your empathy because you just get used to like shooting them or, just treating them as inhuman, even though they totally present as human. We're totally getting that with VO, right? I mean, imagine like a deep fake, right? Where you just want to imagine you're having sex with somebody, right? So you just turn them into like a sex slave, and it's like a totally realistic Westworld video, right? Or if you're like a murderer, a serial killer, or whatever, right? Now you can make a VO video where it's like you going on like a rampage and like killing people from your life. Right? I mean, I'm just being realistic here, right? Some people want to do that kind of thing. And this is like Westworld level videos. I mean, the quality is like, okay, not 100%, but it's like 99% perfect. It's like somebody described it as we're past the uncanny valley. So Westworld, if you put on your VR goggles, maybe, not in the real world, the robotics, the skin over the robot's face isn't that good in real life. But if you put on your VR goggles within, months or whatever, you have full on Westworld. It's crazy stuff. I mean, they walk and talk and act and they say things exactly as a real human. I mean, we're crossing an important threshold here. We're crossing the Rubicon. Okay, what else we got here? Ming/Outplayed X was saying, I don't think replacing OnlyFans is a concern. Losing more folks like my mother to a fire hose of falsehoods like mis and disinformation remains one of my greatest near-term fears. Yeah, I mean, I think that's coming too, right? Is because we're in this Westworld era, we're past the uncanny valley. There's just going to be like misinformation. And I know people, like my coworker said that she was one of the victims of this like ransom call where her parents thought that she was calling them saying that she needs money. I mean, this stuff is definitely fast approaching, and I'm not like super worried about it. I'm somewhat worried about it. I think we'll just keep making solutions. And I personally think, I tweeted about this a couple of days ago, I personally think that proof of humanity is going to be a thing soon, because the critical threshold is going to be, you get on a Zoom call with me and you really just have no idea if it's me or an AI, right? Because the AI could just be like, it's me, Leron, you got on a Zoom call with me, but it's just not. And it's like, what are you going to do? How do you know it's really me? You could always just be like, whatever, maybe it's Liran, maybe it's Liran's agent. I'm just going to have the conversation, same effect, same net effect. But I do think that a lot of the time, even in this live stream, right? How do you know the live stream is not an AI of me? And maybe you prefer it to be the real me. So how do I tell you that it's the real me? Well, if you look at WorldCoin, right, the orb, they claim that they're solving this problem, but I actually think that they're kind of full of crap. I don't actually think WorldCoin solves the problem, because how does it solve the problem? Like I scanned my iris, let's say 2 months ago, right? And I have a token. And okay, this conversation, I'm digitally signing the conversation with my private key that I got when I scanned my iris. Okay, but so what? How do you know it's not the AI digitally signing the conversation? How does WorldCoin help? I think the only way WorldCoin helps is maybe if I have the orb at my computer right now. And so right at the start of this call, right, I pull out my orb and it's like, look, I'm scanning my eyeball. And look, the orb on my behalf has now posted a digitally signed message on the orb ledger, on the WorldCoin ledger, saying, yep, I just scanned the eyeballs that match Liran Shapira specifically. But even then, you have to trust that my orb isn't hacked. So now you're trusting the entire security on the idea that I have a legitimate orb device and nobody has looked inside the orb and reverse engineered the private key that the orb is using, which I think if this becomes a valuable use case, somebody's just going to hack whatever signing key the orb is using. And so now even this whole video of me getting my orb scanned could also be AI, right? So how does that help? I actually think this is a damning case against Sam Altman, that he's pitching WorldCoin as if it's some kind of proof of humanity that's going to help the future, when it's totally not. I think Sam Altman's getting hustled, or he's hustling us. If you want to know what a real proof of humanity looks like, I think it looks like the idea of a notary. So let's say I want to tell you that this live stream is genuinely me when it could be the AI. I think what I need to do is call up a notary service, and I think notary services are going to expand. It's probably actually going to be one of the main ways of employment. It's going to be the new Uber, the new DoorDash. So the nearest notary is just going to be some random old guy on a pension who just lives down my street. He's part of the notary network. He just walks over to my house, comes in the door, and looks at me, like touches me, like, yep, I'm talking to a flesh and blood human. Is it Liran Shapira? Probably. He showed me his driver's license, so it's probably Liran Shapira, but whatever it is, it's a flesh and blood human in this setup. He takes a photograph and uploads it, through his phone. And now, look, somebody who's part of the physical notary network has taken a photo with his phone. The only way to have that phone is to be part of the notary network. And if they ever catch that guy abusing the notary network, he gets kicked off the notary network. So you have a human to human trust network, which, yes, it can go awry sometimes, but it's analogous to certificate authorities, right? Like when you visit a website and it's like, yep, this is genuinely HTTPS Amazon.com. Why? Because it has a certificate. Who issued the certificate? A certificate authority. Maybe there's a hierarchy of certificate authorities. That's how it's going to work with a physical notary network. And so when you watch the stream, it's like, yep, Liran is, maybe the stream isn't Liran, but I know that a guy in the notary network came over to his house, verified that he was sitting in the studio right now. And so, yes, maybe he cut over to an AI. Maybe he walked out of the studio and cut over to an AI. But there was a guy who looks like this, sitting in a chair, who is a flesh and blood human that was verified by another flesh and blood human. And that's as much proof as humanity as you're going to get. And actually, maybe the old guy can actually just stand there throughout the duration of the stream. And it could be like, listen, whatever stream you're watching has a close correspondence to what I'm seeing now in terms of a flesh and blood human. Could the stream actually be delivered from somewhere else, or from some other data center? Yeah, there's always shenanigans I can pull, but I think in practice, the key part of what you're going to see in terms of proof for humanity is what I'm telling you now, the flesh and blood network of notaries. That's my prediction. I tweeted it out. I said that I think 1 billion people are going to use a network like this by 2027. So if it's 2028 and WorldCoin is big and nobody's using this kind of flesh and blood notary network, then you can go ahead and call me out on having a wrong prediction, because I'm like 55% sure, maybe not 1 billion people, but I'm 55% sure that this is going to be like a mainstream way to identify yourself, and WorldCoin won't be. Yeah, and by the way, if you guys think that what I'm saying sounds accurate, feel free to put a reaction or whatever, right? So I can gauge if I'm making sense to you guys. Yeah, and Ori Nagel saying a drone notary network. Yeah, so I mean, if you trust the guy launching the drone, that's true. He doesn't have to walk all the way over to my house if he can just launch a drone from nearby. That's true, especially if he can't walk. All right, let's see what else you guys are saying in the chat here. Any more info about John Sherman? Mr. Beasley saying, any more info about John Sherman and the Center for AI Safety? What type of amazing mistake did the Center for AI Safety do there? Did they just do no research into John before hiring him? So this is my take. I may be wrong. I think they made a mistake when they hired him. I think they kind of bit off more than they could chew, or they kind of they didn't have good self-knowledge or introspection at the time they hired him. The way I understand things, which I'm not guaranteeing that they're accurate because I don't have perfect information here, but I think that Dan Hendricks and co at the Center for AI Safety, I think they realized, look, it's crunch time. Talking to Congress people, the Congress people just say, the representatives, they just say that they need more of a groundswell. So we have to create a groundswell, which I've been on that page for a long time, right? The reason I do Doom debates is I think unless we move the Overton window and make it just like household knowledge that, like, yes, AI Doom is coming. We need to fight back against AI Doom. I don't think the representatives are going to lead. They're not going to lead by walking way ahead of people. They really need to refer to the grassroots movement. So because of that, so the Center for AI Safety finally got on the same page, and they're like, okay, well, we do a lot of different initiatives to help AI safety. Let's do an initiative of raising up the groundswell. Oh, John Sherman, he's actually on the forefront, right? Peabody Award-winning journalist. If you don't know John Sherman, go to youtube.com/ I think it's @4humanity AI risk, I think is his YouTube channel. So look for 4humanity. So that's his podcast. So the Center for AI Safety was like, yeah, let's hire this guy. Let's actually empower him. I think they were talking like 7-figure level budget over a few years or something, like very significant budget. They were treating him very seriously, as they always do. They're serious people, huge respect for Center for AI Safety. So they really were like rationally saying, yeah, this is a good movement. But then, as Nirit Weisblatt pointed out, sometimes John gets a little edgy and he says things that, really he shouldn't have said, that people should burn down the data center. Specifically, he said something like, if people knew what was going on at these AI companies, they'd want to burn them down, which I actually, I don't think that statement is too bad, because it's not saying, hey, everybody listening to this podcast, take out your weapons and go attack somebody. I don't think anybody interpreted it as that call, because you don't see anybody saying, really, John, you really want me to attack? Don't you think that's a little extreme? Like, there's nobody asking a clarifying question as to whether or not John was telling them to attack. And there was no, but you can imagine, okay, somebody who's mentally unwell is reading, they're schizophrenic, whatever. They think John is whispering to them or whatever. The logic behind claims like that is like, look, yeah, everybody would burn them down if they knew what was happening. Ergo, we should just pass a law to make it illegal. If everybody knew what was going on, we wouldn't break society down. We would just use the tools that we've developed as a society to shut it down. It's like saying, oh, if everybody knew what car companies were doing when they released cars without seatbelts, they would burn the car companies down. Okay, so what do we do? Just legislation to have seatbelts. It's not literally like, oh, burn the car company down. Like, that's just stupid. And, and we all know that, which again, the proof point is you didn't see arguments in the comments being like, hey, I'm going to listen to John's advice. I'm bringing my pitchfork and my torch. Who's with me, right? There was nobody was actually interpreting it that way. But that said, should John have said that? No, because he's opening himself to associations, right? Dumb people, the Mark Andreessens of the world literally are accusing him of calling for violence. So you can just avoid that by just not saying that. And he shouldn't have said it. And he knows he shouldn't have said it. Center for AI Safety knows he shouldn't have said it. Okay, so we have to play a little bit carefully here. I would never say that, because I can just make the same point that we really mean without saying something dumb that's going to get an unfair accusation of violence. I mean, I probably will say something dumb that's going to get me an unfair accusation of violence, but it's not as dumb as saying, let's burn the labs down. I'll just, I'll just say they shouldn't exist or whatever, right? I'll be a little more abstract. Yeah. So anyway, so back to your question here, right? So what really happened? So they bit off more than they can chew. They hired John. John is edgy. The clip surfaced of him being a little bit edgy about what we should do to AI companies. And then they kind of changed their mind, because I think they just had this realization of like, look, we're just not prepared to be seen as people who are like really confident that we need to shut down AI progress. We're just not prepared to have that reputation, because it's even more important for us to be able to get in the room where it happens, to be able to get invited into all these conversations and not get kicked out of conversation because people are like, oh, Center for AI Safety. Aren't those guys, those zealots, those hardcore extremists who just want to burn AI down? I think the Center for AI Safety just realized they have to play the middle. And normally I would be like, come on, that's just a pipe dream. Rationalists think of themselves as playing the middle, but they're really just being chicken shits. So like every rationalist is like, I'm a neutral entity. I don't take a stand. When people think about me, they just think about a neutral voice. I have the credibility to be in any room, but really the only room that they're in is their mom's basement, right? Like they're not really getting invited to any halls of power whatsoever, right? They're just sitting there being a chicken shit, like never tweeting anything that anybody wants to read or get value from. So that's like the typical rationalist position. If you're actually in the Center for AI Safety and you're saying we need to play the middle, that is one of the rare cases where it's like, okay, fair enough. You know what? You just shouldn't have hired John Sherman. You're right. Like you should have just spun off a new institution, hired John under a different brand, not a brand that tries to get in the room where it happened, and had the best of both worlds. But you didn't. You hired him to the Center for AI Safety, and you should have known this was going to happen, and you effed up on the day that you hired him. And yeah, and your communication was chicken shit, but maybe that's optimal. Once you realize you make a mistake, maybe backing out in the manner of a chicken shit probably was the best move that they can do under the circumstances to fix their mistake. So like, look, the fact that they didn't like reply to my tweet, maybe it's like, yeah, we're like Homer, right? Retreating into the bushes, you know, that meme. We know we effed up. We just want to end this. We don't think this is worth replying. We just want to pretend this never happened and go back to trying to interact with politicians. I think that's fine. Now, if your name isn't Center for AI Safety, if your name is Miri and you're trying to pull a playbook like that, give me a break. Right? I said this on my show. If you're Miri, just own the position that you want to pause AI. Right? And this is like, I think 95% of people who think of themselves as communications people, just be authentic, just say your position. In the specific case of Center for AI Safety, they've done so much good work that you can call it like centrist AI research. Like, look, we just call it as we really are neutral, okay? We don't have a specific position. We've said stuff that disagrees with Miri. We've said stuff that disagrees with AI companies. We're really playing the center. And the truth is that, like, in politics, I'm not exactly a political mastermind, but I know enough to tell you in politics, when there's a bunch of different factions, if you can get yourself in the middle, you do actually have a lot of leverage, right? It's like in the House of Representatives, right? Remember like Susan Collins or Murkowski, right? Lisa Murkowski, like, or who's that guy that the Democrats had one, Manchin, right? So you hear about the halls of power where you just have this power player who just happens to be split in the center, you know, like the keystone of the arch, right? The keystone of the arch is like this tiny little stone that has so much leverage over the stability of the arch. Well, similarly in politics, you know, if you're playing the center, you can have this crazy amount of power. Like Joe Manchin, a random Democratic senator who normally you wouldn't think about him much, but he happened to be in the center, right? He happened to be the tie-breaking vote on a bunch of bills. So the Center for AI Safety, they want to get into that position. They want to get into the room where everybody else kind of has a side, and then they're the center, and then they tip the decision one way. Okay, so if that's who you are, fine, don't hire John Sherman. All right, next question. I'll pull one of the later questions here. Ori Nagel's asking, did YouTube give you an award for 5,000 subscribers? They gave me an email that had like a party icon. So, you know, respect, you know, I appreciate, thank you, YouTube. But you might be wondering, what is this thing behind me? So let me show you this bling. Okay, check this out. A lot of people are very impressed that I have this award. This award says, presented to Doom Debates for having a high P of 100,000 subscribers. Now, this award, you know, it has the YouTube logo on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that YouTube gave it to me. So the truth happens to be that I actually ordered this on Amazon for $80 and I only have 5,000 subscribers, but I think the spirit is on the right track, that we do have a high probability of getting 100,000 subscribers. And I don't think it's dishonest to just have this sitting in the back of my podcast. I mean, just because it's too far away for people to read the caption, you know, that sounds fine to me. Yeah, and anyway, it'll be a non-issue in a few months anyway, when we really do have 100,000 subscribers. Okay, next question. Tomius is saying, considerations of doom aside, do you agree with Epic AI's projection of no AGI by 2030 and a progressively diminishing probability of AGI in the years after 2030? No, I don't see I'm not even sure what that means, progressively diminishing, like their curve of when AI is coming is diminishing. I don't know. I will say this. I think the AI 2027 paper, I don't want to have doomers going around saying like, you better get your life in order, get your affairs in order by 2027, because that's when it's game over. I don't think that's a false statement. I think anybody who's talking about 2027, unless you're somebody like an Elon Musk who tends to have like just really fast timelines in general, if you look at like the centrist doomer position, like me and anybody who I'm likely to follow, they're saying like, yeah, 2027 with like a 25% chance, 30% chance, like we have to be very open to the possibility that it's game over in 2027. But are we going to confidently predict that 2028 is totally not happening for humanity? No, I don't want to confidently predict. Why would I confidently predict that? A lot of being an effective, a lot of predicting the future effectively just comes down to knowing what you can and can't predict. Just because we have a confident prediction that the end game of AI is going to be super intelligence disempowering humanity, or ending up bad for humanity, or yeah, you know, something like that, optimizing the future better than humans can optimize the future and steering the future that way. Just because we're confident about that prediction, it doesn't mean we now can tell you better than the AI companies when certain capabilities are going to emerge. And as you know, none of us predicted Turing test passing specifically in 2022 or whatever you want to call it, 2024. If I think the technical research paper calling it was 2025, but whatever, in this range, right? If you talk to a bunch of people in 2015 and you ask, give me your best guess as to a year when the Turing test is going to be passed, I think the median you would have gotten is something like 30 years in the future. That was a popular answer. So like 2045. I guess, which isn't even a terrible guess. Okay, you said 2045. The real answer is 2023. I mean, that's not bad in my opinion, but um, the fact that it happened, it happened early according to a lot of our timelines. Eliezer specifically said that he was surprised even at the leap from GPT-3 to GPT-4 that LLM scaled more than we thought. I was certainly surprised. There is an Eliezer victory that he likes to claim, which I think is legitimate, which is in 2021, there was a pretty prominent paper. You guys probably don't remember this, but there's a pretty prominent paper by some organization. Was it one of the effective altruist organizations? I forgot which institute put this out, but it was a paper being like, here's a bunch of reasons because of like evidence from biology of why we should think that superintelligence is 30 years away. And Eliezer at the time was like, this is like a terrible paper. This reasoning is not valid at all. We shouldn't think that AI is 30 years away. We should just have wide confidence intervals. It could be later. It could definitely be a lot sooner. We shouldn't be surprised if it just comes a lot sooner. I think Eliezer should take a pretty big win for making that statement. I was on Team Eliezer. I also found the 30-year arguments unconvincing, and I also had wide confidence intervals. So that would be an interesting exercise to look that up. It shouldn't be too hard to find. But there were a lot of people being like, come on, Eliezer, these are good outside view arguments. And he's like, no, they're not. And he wrote up like a dialogue being like, this is, the person in the dialogue making the argument. He's like the simplicio. He's like the idiot. And like, I do think Eliezer got vindicated pretty nicely on calling out that paper. Yeah, Ajay Kotra's paper. I think that's right. And Ajay Kotra undoubtedly is a smart person who's constantly contributing to the discourse, right? So I'm not trying to like slam her personally. In general, I think her work is good, and I hope she keeps doing more of it. I do just think that paper was quite misleading and knowably misleading at the time. And I think Eliezer called her out, and he called out a bunch of people who were supporting the paper. And I do count this as a point of like, yeah, Eliezer Yudkowsky has racked up a lot of points in terms of like saying things that in retrospect, after a few years pass, are like very true and frankly obvious. It's just he said it at a time when they weren't obvious. It wasn't obvious that we would all be converging on saying, yep, AGI is coming in the early 2030s or maybe the late 2020s. This was not obvious in 2021. Yeah, so Eliezer Yudkowsky has scored many points. He will personally tell you about the points he scored helpfully. I can tell you about them too. The protein folding point. He said back when people are saying even super intelligent AI can't predict protein folding, and now it's like, oh, protein folding, well, that's a solved problem. But you know what the hard part of the problem is? Actually engineering and nanotechnology. It's like, no. Go back in the past. Don't rewrite history. He was definitely predicting that protein folding was solvable when other people were not. You got to give him the point. All right, one sec. All right, we still have half an hour, guys, so keep the questions coming. And yeah, and if you asked me a question 10 minutes ago, feel free to just re-ask it. I got an older question from Niles Cooper. He's saying, the features on new phones are entirely like the sci-fi I knew growing up. AI, thermal cameras, instant translation, etc. It's like a Star Trek tricorder with her on it. It's so true. I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself because this comes up a lot, but like, I have very specific memories of being like a 7-year-old, just lying around in my bed, no entertainment whatsoever. I read all my library books already. I'm just looking at the ceiling, just killing time, being like, it would be really, really cool if I just had like a TV in my bed. And of course, small black and white TVs were a thing back then. So I could have had that. But then it's like, well, what if I change my position? I still want to be able to look at the TV. So maybe you need like a bunch of different TVs all over the room. Whereas now it's like, oh yeah, I just have an iPhone. I can just stare at it, whatever position I'm in. And it's like crazy good quality. And I can also like wear goggles. So like these little things, I just have countless memories of like all of these different things when I was a kid. I was like, yeah, sometime in the distant Jetsons future, we're just going to have like convenient screens. And I also specifically remember in like 3rd grade, my teacher was like, what's the technology they're working on? A video phone. It'll be like a phone, but it'll have video. And it just seemed like Jetsons technology, right? And now it's like, and I even remember the teacher was like, but they're really going to have to work out the problems with the technology because somebody calls you on the video phone and you're naked. What are you going to do? There's going to have to be some button where you accept the call, right? It's just like, and now it's like, duh, right? It's like, this isn't even, why are we even talking about this, right? Like my kids are growing up FaceTime natives, right? Like they just, they take it for granted. And like, I give my son like, hey, look, I just set up a new iPad for you. And like, yeah, all the things you've seen me do on my phone, you can do it on this too. Everything just magically works because we're living in the future. And you know what else is crazy? Like jetpacks work now, right? Like jetpacks and flying cars totally work. Drones totally work. Like I remember when this stuff was like hopelessly in the future. It's crazy. You know, like even Inspector Gadget, remember like the thing in his backpack pops out and he like flies around with it. I'm pretty sure that's like just about possible to just be an Inspector Gadget. And when the day that is possible won't be a bigger shock than the shock that I had using in 2007 using a capacitative touchscreen, right? Like the fact that the touchscreen was that good, I'm like, what the F? Because I don't know if you guys remember, like 20 years ago or whatever. Like I remember I would like go to like Costco or like certain stores, and they would have this like incredibly janky. I think it was like resistive touchscreen. Is like super janky touchscreens where like you touch it and it's like not sensitive at all, like barely registers your touch, but you can still kind of use it. And I'm like, yeah, this is a touchscreen. Touchscreen sucks. And then I get the iPhone, the first iPhone. My coworker has it. I'm playing with it. I'm like, what the F? You can just have a touchscreen that's this good? Like I didn't realize technology was allowed to be this good. So anyway, yeah, one of my favorite themes to dwell on is like living in the future. And again, to relate it to AI doom, right? Extrapolate. If I have this experience of growing up and having all these technologies just seem like in the distant Jetsons future, and then it's like, oh, nice, I'm becoming middle aged now, and they're just here, and then there's like more technologies coming. What do you think the more technologies are going to be? Something that's also from the Jetsons future, right? Extrapolate. Okay, well, that's why I'm not going to be surprised when the AI is like, hey, look, I built Mirror Life, right? Like I got some humans to do my bidding and I built Mirror Life. That's not going to be a surprise to me. I'm going to be like, yep, this is like a mainline doom scenario that the AI does this. All right, let's get some newer questions here. Oh, nice. Haiku is saying, I have meetings set up with 2 state level congresspersons. All right, round of applause for Haiku. That's great. Okay. Bacon Priest is asking, if you didn't have children, would you look forward to ASI bringing the end of humanity as we are creating our successor? Or would you want a future with as much humanity in as possible? I don't think me having children changes my views on humanity that much. I just think, not killing humanity is a good outcome. When you say creating our successor, I think, look, this is what it comes down to. People like Robin Hanson point out that we're not going to have a permanently human future. We want our values to shift somewhat, the same way they've shifted in the past. We don't want to literally freeze our values and an overly narrow definition of our values. So the question is, what does a good outcome look like? What's the correct pace of change? If AI takes over the world over the course of decades, isn't that just regular economic progress where now there's just AI descendants? Okay, the descendants aren't made of flesh and blood. Isn't that fine? How is that different from having like an artificial heart, right? Or like Neuralink? Neuralink isn't doom, right? So how is building an AI successor different from Neuralink? These are good questions. And my answer to that is just like, I don't know, find some point in the middle, but it's not the point where AI turns the entire world into gray goo in the next decade. Okay. That's too far. That's too far down the slippery slope or the spectrum. Okay. There's some point, it's a spectrum that I don't feel like I know how to think about well, but I don't think that throwing up your hands and saying, whatever happens, happens, just define that as being good. I don't think that's the answer either. I think the answer is grappling with the messy middle here, right? Putting like a limit on how fast change is allowed to happen, a limit that's like, in the next 100 years, change can't happen too fast. We can still have change, but it can't like wipe out. You still have to preserve, let's say flesh and blood humans. Let's just go ahead and say, just as a prudent measure, that there should be a way to be a flesh and blood human for like the next 50 years minimum, just in case, just as a backup, as an option that you can take, right? That seems like a prudent option. And then after that, can we have AI descendants? Sure. I just think that if it all happens really fast, if you just say whatever happens, happens, and it can all happen in the next 5 years, it just seems like you're not going to get the outcome that if you had a lot of time to reflect, you would really think that that's a good outcome. Even if you're Robin Hanson, I even think that Robin Hanson may feel a pang of regret if this outcome is what's happening. Okay, Brian O'Neill is asking, um, if AGI Doom is viral or physical, could living off the grid and disconnected from the regular people, might it be possible to outlive the AI Doom described above? Well, this is an interesting question just because we know Sam Altman has a bunker. We know Mark Zuckerberg has a bunker. I think Peter Thiel has a bunker. And there was a pretty shocking quote from Ilya Sutskever that came out. Remember Ilya, co-founder of OpenAI, he has his own AI company now. Ilya famously told people to feel the AGI. Ilya famously agreed that Sam Altman was not a good CEO. He was too shady, basically. So Ilya Sutskever recently, a quote came out, I think maybe from private emails, where he was saying, yeah, we should all make sure to build the bunker before we release like the super intelligent AI. But he was kind of saying in the context of like, yeah, my bunker, your bunker, Sam Altman's bunker, like we elites, right? We AI builders, we need to put ourselves in the bunker when we release this. And I don't like to play gotcha, but there is like some hypocrisy here, or like there is a missing mood. Like there's something not right here. I think if you're listening to the show, you probably agree. Like there's something not right from us joking about lights out for everybody, like knocking that possibility around, like haha, but also let's race to build AGI. And so I do think that it was like disturbing. I mean, personally, it didn't affect my day that much, but like, I do think that it's worth bringing up as being like, look, Ilya Sutskever, he's a great guy, but there is this cognitive dissonance when he's like, haha, better get in my bunker before I really say, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. The AI safe. Is it safe though, Ilya? Right? Are you actually helping society, or are you actually vastly net negative for society? And I lean toward him being vastly net negative. It's kind of, he's what you might call grin fucking society, right? He's like, or it's like when people who don't like Donald Trump say, but he's so nice in person, right? It's like Ilya Sutskever, he's so nice when he's like recording videos about telling you should feel the AGI and like approach it prudently and respect it. But at the same time, he's building it and he's acting like, look, in the end, you got to build it. So, I see a contradiction there. I see myself, I wouldn't call it grin fucking, but he's more like, I don't even know. He's got like the mask or the LARPing as somebody who's prudent without actually doing the protocol of somebody who actually is afraid that we're doomed. I see a contradiction there. Similarly, I see a contradiction in 2023 when he was heading up the super alignment team together with Jan Leike. It's like, yeah, guys, we're doing super alignment and we got to solve it in 4 years. But also, let's have OpenAI keep working on capabilities. I'm like, what? So I see Ilya as somebody who's been caught in too many of these self-contradictory positions. I don't really respect the way that he gets himself in those positions. And right now, I consider it self-contradictory that he has an AI lab that he's secretive about. He's calling it safe superintelligence, which implies superintelligence better be safe. It would be disastrous to make superintelligence that's not safe. And yet, he's not out there on the record being like, you need to shut down OpenAI. You need to shut down all the open source AI labs. This is not okay what's happening. Nope, he's not on record saying that. He just hopes to like come out riding out and getting out in front of everybody using even better AI technology than the technology that he gave to OpenAI. Get out in front like Superman, right? Like Superman catching somebody who's falling off a cliff. Like that's basically Ilya Sutskever's vision. He is basically a Dr. Isherwell from the movie Don't Look Up, being like, yeah, the asteroid's coming, but we're going to mine it in. We're going to make it safe. We're just going to have total victory. All the things that we want to do here, both mine all the value out of it and make it safe. That's what I'm going to do with a new secretive project. And also, I'm not going to tell OpenAI that they're being reckless. It doesn't work like that. You just can't have a plan to do all of these different things. It's just overly ambitious. It's just foolish, right? It's like you're not being realistic about what's actually possible for humanity right now. Jerry Hellman saying, compare Ilya's comments to John Sherman's. I mean, I think it's just different realms, right? I mean, I don't think Ilya needs to be canceled for that one comment. I'm happy to give him some charity and be like, okay, yeah, he was just joking about the bunker. He doesn't really expect to escape to his bunker. Fine. Okay. That's not my main beef with him. All right. Similarly, I would give him extend to Ilya the same charity that extend to John Sherman, where John Sherman is saying, oh my God, people would burn this AI company down if they heard about it. Extend him the charity of saying, he is not whispering to people who are mentally unwell to burn the AI lab down. I'm happy to extend that charity as well. All right, I got some new questions coming in on the Substack. Let's see. Okay. So a Substack subscriber named Kaushik is saying, hi, Liron. It's an honor to be getting the chance to ask a question to you. It's an honor to be answering, Kaushik. He says, it is my current belief that we will not reach AGI unless we arrive at models that no longer have a strict separation between the training and inference phase. Right, I agree. We're not going to have a strict separation between training and inference. And let me just pause to do a note on that, okay? This is actually something else I've tweeted about. I think this is an important observation. If you think back to 2023, a lot of people were telling us, don't worry, AI is limited to talk about stuff that was in its training data. So like, don't worry, you're never going to see AI command a mission to the moon because all of the different knowledge that you need to command a mission to the moon, it hasn't been reading mission to the moon training data. So it's fine. It's always just going to interpolate. That particular line of argument, and by the way, I heard that line of argument from people who were employed making a nice fat salary as engineers for an AI lab. AI company, like, one of the top AI companies were telling me stuff like that. Like AI just knows what's in its training data and I was just like, what? But look at humanity. Like, we evolved, humans do way more than what's in their training data. And the moon mission is the perfect example of that. But if you look at, 2025, nobody's saying AI is limited to its training data. And you can observe, I had an anecdote. I asked Claude 4 to like, hey, help me research the best place to get t-shirts printed for Doom debates. This kind of anecdote, it doesn't even look at its data. It's just like, okay, great. Yeah, I have a million token context window. So let me just do a web search. Let me visit a bunch of sites in the web search. Let me just load up my working memory here with all this relevant information. And then let me reason about it. In other words, exactly what a human does. So like, who's even talking about the training data anymore? And I guess you would call this in context learning. Okay. But I don't even think, you need a separate word for it. It's just the correct way to answer questions, right? The correct way to steer reality from having a question to knowing its answer is you just collect the optimal information for it and then you reason about it, right? So at this point, this whole idea that there's some firewall of like, oh, it's only about what was trained in its data. It's like, no, they're just getting trained on the general concept of how to find paths toward a goal and yeah, have a bunch of context about how the universe works. But once somebody knows enough, once somebody's a powerful generalist, they can enter other domains. So like, imagine somebody who has a low IQ, but they've done 4 years of education on a particular topic compared to somebody who has a high IQ and a lot of general knowledge about the world entering the same topic. How many months is it going to take before the lines cross and the person who had no prior training catches up? I don't think catching up generally takes very long. And that's why, in context learning or whatever, surpassing your training doesn't take very long, in my opinion. Okay, let me go back to reading this question. So Kaushik is saying, it's my current belief that we will not reach AGI unless we arrive at models that no longer have a strict separation between the training and inference phase. And if they can continually tune their weights adaptively during inference time compute, regardless of its generality at that stage, it would only be a matter of time that we would reach AGI. Do you think we can have AGI without such a merger? And if so, how do you think models can be a complete generalizer without blurring those lines? Adding to this, what are your personal markers of high AGI potential breakthroughs? What would concern you the most? I don't mean based on empirical results, like being able to answer the HLE. I'm not sure what the HLE is. HLE with high accuracy. Oh, humanities last exam. Being able to answer humanities last exam with high accuracy or something, but in terms of the model architecture itself. So one is I want to have humility here, right? So I'm not like certain individuals that I've talked about on the show. Martin Casado comes to mind. There are these individuals who are like always telling us what they think AI can't do, but then when you press them on it, they're like, now, how does this cash out? Does this actually mean that you don't think that AI can make the Oscar-winning movie of 2027? And they're like, well, if maybe it could do that, but then it would have to have like the right training data, and it would have to have RL toward that. And I'm like, okay, so you're just hedging your position so that you're allowed to explain anything that happens, but you get to sound smart, throwing around buzzwords about what AI can't do. So I have the humility to be like, look, I don't know. I'm looking at a trend line that seems powerful to me. It seems like there's a lot of different reasons that are supporting this trend line. Same as like Moore's law, right? So Kurzweil made a fool out of all of us, right? Kurzweil is like, listen, I think that whatever's driving this trend line is going to keep driving it. And I admit that I was like, come on, Kurzweil, you can't just reason from a trend line, okay? You don't know what you're talking about. I think Moore's law, if you look at clock speed, it petered out. And like, sure, transistor density still kept climbing, but clock speed petered out, okay? So Kurzweil doesn't know anything. And then when you extrapolate Moore's law all the way out to superintelligence, come on, you're tripping, Kurzweil, you're tripping. But he somehow turned out to be right, okay? So I got to eat humble pie. So similarly, I have humility about how like I see these trends going, and I just think there's a significant possibility that they'll just keep going to superintelligence. I don't want to overthink it here. I don't want to claim that I have knowledge that I don't have. So now in terms of like, okay, specific indicators, what's going to make me say, holy crap? I mean, it's basically any time that I see something AIs totally can't do, and then I see them doing it, I'm just like, okay, well, this seems like the time to superintelligence is now less. And if I think about recent examples, a few come to mind. I mean, VO3, right? It's crazy. I told you guys to watch that movie. It's like incredibly impressive, and it didn't exist a few months ago. Similarly, the OpenAI image gen milestone, which I think Google's image generator, I think is very close to now. So these two image generators, there used to be a point where you would tell DALL-E to generate an image, and it would only kind of do something in the ballpark of what you're asking for. And then you'd be like, no, I don't want that. Get rid of this. And then it would just generate another image, and it would still not be what you want. And so if you'd asked me this 6 months ago, I'd be like, it would be really awesome? An AI image generator that actually made you an image that you want, instead of just like 10% of the time you say it's good enough and the other times it's not good enough. Like just actually gave you what you want that was usable. And then sure enough, if you're watching my YouTube channel, you can see all my thumbnails now are heavily generated by OpenAI's latest model. I actually made myself a tool where I can hit the API like 10 times at once so I can get like a lot of options. And the tool costs me about $1 per minute of my time in terms of the API, right? So it's like, so I'm basically streaming my cash away as I use this tool, but that's fine. I use the tool for half an hour. I spent $30. I like to think my time is worth more than that. So everybody wins. But yeah, I mean, this idea of using these generators to make thumbnails that are good, I can tell you my personal experience. I was literally on Fiverr a couple months ago, and I was saying, "Hey, who wants to make my YouTube thumbnails?" Right? And of course, they're not going to charge me $5. They're going to charge me like 25 or whatever. I was literally paying humans to make thumbnails, and it was like not a pleasant process. Like there'd be back and forth, and they'd make me a thumbnail that was okay. They were making worse quality thumbnails than what I'm making in a few minutes of using these new AI tools. And this is recent progress. And so the question is like, how many more of these wow moments can I have before we're just at super intelligence? I think there's a finite supply of these kind of incremental steps. If you had asked me 6 months ago, hey, are we potentially plateauing? Might there be an AI winter starting now? I'd be like, sure, yeah, it's possible. But the last 6 months clearly proved me wrong. And similarly to the next 6 months, might there be an AI winter starting now? Yeah, maybe, but I think we're headed for another 6 months of this kind of progress and another 6 months. And I don't see a blockage here, right? And then of course, zooming out, why would there be a blockage, right? Why would the level of our brain in our head, why would this particular piece of meat designed by evolution, why would this represent any kind of limit? All right. I hope this isn't beating a dead horse for you guys, but like, look at birds, right? When we start making airplanes, okay, the right flyer maybe can't even fly as fast as the fastest bird, but why would that be a limit? Why would we not just be able to fly faster than the fastest bird? Oh, hey, it turns out we can fly like 10,000 times faster than the fastest bird. What do you know? You know, birds used to impress us with like how fast they can get to places by flying. Now we're 10,000 times faster than them. Oh, what do you know? Surpassed evolution, right? So I think that that's going to happen with the human brain too. And yeah, I mean, I wonder if there's, what else can I say about like specific milestones that would make me go, holy crap. In recent memory, what we're seeing with these thinking models, when I first saw the models start to do thinking, right, like with O1, I'm like, oh, that's funny. What I discussed with Jim Babcock in a recent episode, like, yeah, they just took the idea of chain of thought where it says, hey, reason out your answer before you give me the final answer. So that's cute that they like put it in a separate stage and they like applied separate reinforcement to it or whatever secret sauce they did. That's cute. But now I'm like, man, this process that they call thinking, it's not even just thinking. When I asked Claude 4 to research like the best sites for me to get like rush order t-shirts, because we're going to be rocking cool Doom Debates t-shirts for less online. Hit me up if you know, respond to my YouTube if you want to get a free t-shirt because you're coming to less online. Anyway, so I'm asking Claude how to get the best t-shirts yesterday on a rush time scale. And Claude isn't just thinking because, you know, I checked the box saying like enable thinking. It's searching the web, it's compiling the results, and then it's thinking about what it should do next. You know, so that buzzword agency, right? So Claude is being an agent. It's doing tasks. It's saying, you know what? I think I'm going to pull the latest version of this webpage so I can scan that and see the latest offer that they're saying in terms of how fast they can ship the shirts. And yeah, this is still, you can think about searching the web and reading web pages as still like the normal stuff that it does, but like, you know, model context protocol, right? MCP, it's going to be reaching out to tools. And it's going to be like, hey, let me order the t-shirt, right? I mean, how hard would it have been to be like, let me design the t-shirt, let me order the t-shirt, let me run Doom Debates, right? Like, let me do more and more of your job, or you know, so it's just like, I guess the wow moment for me is like, you now have an infrastructure where it can think about what it should do next, and then it can call out to the tool to do it. And this is just standard things that are in production. I mean, it literally, the amount of time that it was thinking, it was like 90 seconds. And when it came up with the answer, I'm like, you know what? That was 90 seconds pretty well spent, you know? So I'm just sitting here. I have this assistant that just spent 90 seconds crunching through a bunch of useful tasks, and like it was worthwhile. So to me, that is like another wow moment compared to like 6 months ago, where like these AIs are definitely doing more and more. And it makes me feel more and more useless because now, if you ask me to do a Google search, I don't even feel like I'm qualified to be searching Google anymore. Because when I search Google, I'm lazy. I'm like, okay, let me just let me open a couple links in new tabs. Let me read them. I don't even want to search Google anymore. That's too advanced for me. I would rather ask Claude to search Bing on my behalf. I think it uses the Bing API. I'm not sure about that. And compile the results, read every web page, open their links, think about what to do next, maybe do another search. I would rather just have Claude do all that while I eat potato chips, right? So even searching Google right now is like a subhuman task at this point. And it's actually funny because back in the early 2000s, there was a funny website called Let Me Google That For You, where somebody could like message me on AOL Instant Messenger and be like, hey, Leron, I'm curious about something. You know, do you know about this? And then I would send them a link. I'd be like, yeah, let me Google that for you. It was like lmgfy.com. Like, let me Google that for you, slash, and then their search query. And then they'd click it and it would be like an animation being like, let me Google for you. And like the mouse would move to like the Google search box and it would like type their query. And I'm basically just like being a dick. But now I'm using Claude as my let me Google that for you agent. I'm like, Claude, please Google this for me and like do it better than I would. So that's kind of funny. All right, so we're getting to the end here. So I'll probably just take a couple more live questions from the chat and then we will wrap it up. And then you guys can go get your less online tickets. So we can chat on Friday. And yeah, you can have unlimited conversation time if you hit me up live on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Okay, what do we got here? Yeah, James is saying, LOL, I used to LMGTFY all the time. Okay, Blue Horizon is asking, why can't you understand that GI, general intelligence, is binary, just like Turing's universality is binary? There is no function that can't be represented in C, and there's no C program that can't be understood on my line. Yeah, of course, general intelligence is binary. Sorry. Of course, Turing completeness is binary, right? So you can, when you have a formal system, you can either prove that it's Turing complete or not. And we know about systems that are sub-Turing complete, like finite state automata. It can compute, but it's not Turing universal. But then you add in a couple more capabilities and suddenly it is Turing universal. So this gets to the argument of like, can't you just like train a gorilla to be as smart as a human? Because as long as you just give the gorilla, like you just teach the gorilla how to do like an AND gate, right? How to do like a few Boolean operations. And then technically the gorilla can follow along to like everything a human does. It just takes the gorilla like a year of like tracing through the logical operation of NAND gates in order to understand like a sentence that a human just said. But it's just like, what's the point, right? It's just like what I said about plants. Okay, yeah. So like on some really drawn out, tedious timescale, humans can technically check every step of like a formal proof that the AI sent us. But like, so what, right? I mean, obviously, there's a major scale effect here, right? And this is by the way is my argument on Searle's Chinese Room, how I said it's like a non-insight. Okay, yeah, when you imagine that Searle's Chinese Room is just a book that you can flip through and then just answer a question in Chinese by flipping through a guidebook a couple times, when you imagine it that way, something seems really weird and it seems like the intelligence is missing, but you're just not seeing the scale effect because the actual book needs to be really, really huge. The book needs to have like quadrillions of bits of information or whatever scale is in the memory of GPT, right? Really huge scale, like a lot of these H100s. So you need to somehow serialize the contents of a lot of weights and a lot of H100s into this giant book, much bigger than the World Book Encyclopedia. Oh, and the part where you flip through it, yeah, you need to flip through it for like a year to answer like one simple question. So once you actually draw out the scale of this, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. It's kind of like saying how like a gorilla can reason or a plant can reason. It's like, yeah, this is technically happening, but it's like so slow. And then if you make it happen at human scale, oh, you get something that looks like a brain where like the neurons are like flashing really fast and there's a lot of them. So that's like what I think basically. So when you're telling me like, come on, Leon, intelligence is binary. Yeah, it's binary, but there's like major scale effects here, right? So like anybody can tediously have, an ape trace through their intelligence, but it just doesn't really work in practice. Yeah, something is happening. He's saying classic troll answer on internet forums. Let me Google that for you. Yeah, it's kind of like a Rickroll, right? Like you act like you're helping somebody and it's just let me Google that for you. I mean, one funny thing is, it's now a regular occurrence. It happens like once or twice a week, where my wife texts me a question like, oh, do you think this public school is going to have this for our son? Like where should we enroll him? And then my whole answer is like linking her to, or like actually I don't even think she has ChatGPT Pro, and so I will just ask ChatGPT Pro or like one of my AI subscriptions, and then I'll just like send her a screenshot of the answer. So I'm basically like, let me chat that for you from the perspective of my wife. But it is actually interesting to me that in my mind I just imagine that once I've done that to my wife like a dozen times, she'll be like, oh wow, I should really pay for a GPT Pro subscription, right? Like she'll get the message, but she keeps preferring to text me. So let's see how long that lasts. But actually, in my wife's case, I already know she's searching Google and then she's using maybe not AI mode, but she's using like the AI answers, right? So she's already becoming like an AI user just by virtue of Google, which by the way, I really think Google is a good investment right now. I think they're probably going to leapfrog OpenAI just because I do think their integration into Google search is getting really, really good. Like I'm pretty happy to search Google right now. And I think their progress of development is really fast and they have a ton of resources and they have the search business that's actually making the company profitable instead of OpenAI, which is still wildly unprofitable. So even though OpenAI has gotten crazy traction, my number one horse to bet on right now is Google. So like I said, I'm buying Google stock. I bought some Google calls that I recently got lucky and I got a 10x return on Google calls before I sold them and then it crashed right after. Anyway, so I'm playing the stock market a little bit. Just so you know though, I'm not being reckless. The way that I play the stock market is I'm just like, let me venture an amount that I don't care too much if it disappears, like $1,000, and I'm only putting it on bets that I hope are going to 10x. That's like how I roll. So that way I can just like forget about it. Okay, I lost $1,000, whatever. Like, I still have like a larger portfolio than that. So I'm like, okay. But then once in a while, I'm like, sweet, I made 10x. And of course, roughly that happens like 1 out of 10 times, right? Because markets are efficient. Anyway, that's just how I roll. If you want to know the way that I personally like to gamble. All right. So I'll just do the last 1 or 2 questions here. All right. Samantha Smith is asking, and by the way, I got to shout out female representation. I think this may have been the first female interaction in the chat. So thanks for that. Okay. Do you think that incentive structures like, say, platform cooperatives in comparison to commercial market, in comparison to commercial platforms, I guess, makes any difference in P-Doom, plus fixing the ownership concentration? Let's see. So the idea is like you could have like a platform cooperative. So like you're not making the AI out of like a corporate for-profit AI company, but you're doing it through like a platform cooperative. Maybe even something like remember my last guest Himanshu Tyagi, right, who's working on Sentient. I mean, I think you're kind of giving his pitch, right? Like he wants to do a platform cooperative and he's like, the AI is going to be open source. We're all going to develop it together, and that's why it's aligned with everybody. Um, if AI wasn't going to be uncontrollable to whoever builds it, right? That's my number one problem is I think it's going to be uncontrollable to whoever builds it. My number 2 problem is that I think there might be a time when it is controllable for a while and we want the good guys to control it. I actually think that there's a strong argument there, and that might make me want the US to develop it and keep it secret from China or whatever. I'm sympathetic to the argument, but I think the whole discussion can just simplify down from my perspective to like, nobody should build it, right? Which is why the title of the book coming out from Miri is if anyone builds it, everyone dies. And I believe that. I believe if anyone builds it, everyone dies, or at least I believe that with a very high probability, let's say 30% plus, that if everyone builds it, if anyone builds it, everyone dies. I believe that. So in that case, having a cooperative build it, does that count as anyone? Yes, right? So you just follow the logic of the book title. Speaking of the book title, though, the unfortunate thing about the book title is that like half of the human population struggles with hypotheticals. So it's a bold choice giving the book title the name of a hypothetical. If anyone builds it, everyone dies. I wish them good luck with that. I think it's like a pretty good title, and I struggle to come up with a better one, but it definitely seems like a bold choice to put a hypothetical in the title. All right, so we're coming up on the end here, but this is definitely fun. I plan to do these more. I've been traditionally doing them to celebrate subscriber milestones. Like this is a 5,000 subscriber Q&A. I plan to do them more regularly. Certainly, when you guys are paying for my premium tier, like if you go to Substack and pledge $10, I guarantee that premium subscribers will have at least one Q&A per month. That seems like a standard premium thing. But for all of the peasants out there who want to just do the free content, I'll try to have more Q&As as well. All right, so I'll take the last question here. Let's see who gets the last question. Somebody's saying, all right, I'll just pick 2 out of the ones that are here. I will pick, I'll pick, why does everyone think UBI and profit sharing is a thing? I don't know. All right, I'll pick Jeremy Helm and James. All right, so Jeremy Helm is saying, what if the design approach for model training wasn't weights in a black box, but our human readable data in a hyperorthogonal structure, as demoed in the YouTube video Ted Nelson on zigzag data structures? So Ted Nelson, I think, is the Xanadu guy, right? And I know Robin Hanson has worked. I think he is. I don't know. So Ted Nelson on zigzag data structures. So this gets to something that Eliezer Yudkowsky has pointed out, which is saying back in like 2010 or in like the heyday of the less wrong sequences, Eliezer was thinking it was very likely that building AI would be made out of parts that we understand. And I think a classic example of that is Bayesian networks, like Judea Pearl, reasoning networks. You look at a Bayesian network and it's like, oh, wow, yeah, this is really elegant. This represents like a structure modeling beliefs and how beliefs affect other beliefs. Bayesian networks, I was kind of on the same page personally. I was like, yeah, we're just going to get better at like extending Bayesian networks so that we can just like model how the AI is reasoning about the world, and then it'll be like human understandable. It'll be like these nice high level structures. And boy, if I updated on that. If you listen to my discussion with Jim Babcock, we have a lot of good conversation on this topic, which is like, yeah, it's just there's a lot of quantity. So like if you want to understand how something works, sure you can have a Bayesian network, but it's probably just going to have thousands of nodes. And when you look over it and you're like, yeah, it's kind of human understandable, right? Like you can make circuits within it. Like you can do mechanistic interpretability on one of these complicated Bayesian networks, but there's just a shitload of nodes. There's so many nodes that like, do you really understand it? You're not going to like get an intuition around it. It's just this structure. And you can load it into your head because the human brain is actually big enough to have these kind of Bayesian networks that have thousands of nodes in them, but it's not big enough to like reflect on them and have the conscious mind intuitively explain what exists inside it. You see what I'm saying? It's like the reflective level just can't contend with the low level. I can't tell you what's going on in my neurons. I can't print you a debug output of my neurons, but my neurons probably do look like a network with like a lot of nodes in it. So that was kind of the disappointment we learned is like, yeah, you can build these networks, you can build the, neural networks, you can understand the neural networks, but they're just going to have thousands of nodes in them to understand something interesting, and you just can't explain it. And to be fair, people like Dario and Ilya Sutskever and Jeffrey Hinton and Jan LeCun, to be fair, and let's give credit with credit is due. I'm not a fan of Jan LeCun, but he definitely gets credit for this. Is like he was thinking on these lines. I don't even know how early. Certainly, I think by 2010 he was thinking along these lines, probably earlier. And like I wasn't, and he was, right? So point in favor of Jan and against Eliezer, right? Let's call the points fairly here. But anyway, so to this question now, Jeremy Helm saying, what if the design approach for model training wasn't weights in a black box? So yeah, like I think we can get kind of far with whatever you want to zigzag data structure. I'm not familiar, right? You can get kind of far with understandable data structures, but at the end of the day, I also think you're going to get a lot of mileage for intelligence by just having structures that we can't intuitively explain. Too many nodes, basically. And that is going to suck because you can easily smuggle in a lot of beliefs into those nodes that we're just, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough to be like, oh, well, I can mechanistically interpret what's going on in this Jupiter brain because I found enough circuits. Like, good luck with that. Okay. It doesn't seem like that's how we're going to survive, in my opinion. Okay. I'll take the last question I want to take from James. How are you holding up genuinely? The news has been a lot lately. Where are you at with your thinking emotionally, and what might you want to see in 2 months? So emotionally, I did a tweet about this like a week ago, which is saying like, look, doom is not emotionally real to me. Okay. So in terms of like what my subconscious believes, every day, my subconscious just thinks that I'm in the tech industry having a good time and loving the product launches. Okay. That is what subconsciously Ron is reporting. My rational brain is just being like, this looks like we're just navigating the kayak over the waterfall, right? Like my rational brain is like, we're navigating the spaceship into the black hole. Like this, we're putting the microphone next to the speaker, positive feedback loop. That's what my rational brain is observing. But yeah, I mean, at heart, I'm just another startup tech guy, right? And enjoying the progression. When is my emotional brain going to get in sync with my subconscious brain? Probably when I see my personal life getting disrupted. So like, the power goes out and it's like, oof, this power outage, maybe it'll get restored, but there's not going to be many more bursts of power before the power is gone for good, right? Like this is really bad. I just listened to a really good podcast about the Titanic sinking. This, Noiser Network, highly recommended podcast. The Titanic story is quite interesting. How disasters happen and how people react to them, like in real time or in the moments leading up to them. So I guess, I'm a passenger on the Titanic, right? And most of the passengers didn't panic until pretty late in the game. So I think that's going to be the trajectory of my emotions, where I'll just get more emotional late in the game as I'm like, oh, the lifeboats are gone. The lifeboat was the chance to pause AI before it was like clearly super intelligent and the agents were running around taking over computer assets in a way that human teams had a really hard time getting them out of those computers. Like that would have been the time to like jump in the lifeboat, but lifeboats have all been gone off now. And now it's just, the cold water. So in terms of how I'm doing, yeah, I'm doing fine, no complaints. And maybe we'll get lucky and somehow we won't be doomed and I'll just keep doing fine. I do consider that like a possible scenario, right? The Mike Israetels of the world are telling me that that's what I should expect. And I hope they're right. And if they are right, then my emotions will never miss a beat in order to get into that out, because that's what they already expect. And one thing I wrote in my tweet is the reason why my subconscious isn't listening to my emotion. There's an evolutionary explanation why, which is my subconscious evolved to know that my rational brain had nothing to say about doom. Right? There's no evolutionary pressure to have your subconscious mind listen to your rational brain's advice about whether the world is doomed. That has zero evolutionary value. That did not help my ancestors survive by listening to their rational brain tell them about whether or not we're doomed. So my subconscious just thinks that my rational brain is entirely just here to BS and argue for having a bigger share of the tribe's resources and argue for having the tribe do things that benefit my family and my genes. And anything else that my rational brain is going to tell it about like the world at large is really just motivated BS, right? That's what my subconscious thinks. And so my subconscious is just thinking that the only signals of how to feel should just come from, social status and resources, right? Like how's my bank account doing, stuff like that. And it's doing fine. So, all right. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, subconscious knows I'm a word salad. That's one way to put it. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up now. For those of you who didn't get to catch the whole thing, I'll be publishing this on my channel, probably unedited. And I'll just put in one more plug. Please come to Less Online. It's a really fun conference. If you've ever enjoyed any kind of conference, this is probably the best, the king of all conferences in terms of like how cool it is to come and how many cool interactions you can have. Lighthaven is a very intentionally designed space to have these kind of cool interactions. And also, if you come there, hit me up. They don't have sponsorships. Okay. So if you guys are coming to Less Online, we got to do this on the down low. Okay. It's essentially smuggling. So I'm just going to have a backpack. I'm going to have extra free t-shirts that you can have if you want to represent Doom Debates. I'm not going to be giving out swag per se, but if you come up to me and say the magic word, the morning bird rests on the jub tree, then I will open the backpack and you can reach your hand in and take one of the t-shirts out, and it'll just be a totally non-financial transaction. All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.